scholarship for that class. So I will share my experience with that as well. But before you jump into creating your study schedule, there's definitely some things that you want to consider. Like Michael said, the available MCAT dates. There are no dates offered in February or October through December. So when you're looking at what date you want to register for and what you want your really your end deadline to be, keep that in mind. As well as Michael said, these dates fill up really, really fast, and sometimes you won't find a study center, testing center that's near where you are. So you might have to account for some travel time, which I had to do because I lived in Merced and there wasn't anything close by, so I had to do a little bit of travel. So just keep that in mind when you're picking a day for your MCAT. You also want to keep in mind, are you in school full-time or part-time? Are you working full-time or part-time? And also, do you have anything outside of school or work that would take away from your studying? Be very realistic about how much time those things will take and how much time you will be able to dedicate to your studying before you set a date for yourself. I think what I've heard most people do is about 3 months is, I think, average. But if you have school or work, you may need to add time to that. So just do a little bit of self-reflection and see how much time you're going to be able to dedicate to that. Also, you want to think about what materials you're going to have access to, and I think Michael touched a little bit on this, but studying for the MCAT, taking the MCAT, applying to medical school, it's all really expensive and it can add up very fast. So think about whether you feel you'll need a prep course, and we can talk a little bit more about some of the pros and cons about that, but if you will need one, if you feel you would like one, kind of take into account a little bit of budgeting, books and stuff like that. Books are not as expensive, but definitely also a little expense. And then use all of that information to pick your date and try and stick to it so you have an end goal in mind. So some of the resources that you might want to, that you have available to you while you're studying, or you should have available to you, all the different test companies come out with a set of section review books, which I would definitely recommend. If you don't have a prep course, get one of these books, one of these sets of books. Which one you prefer will really, or which one is best for you, will depend on what your learning style is, and that's something that you should really think about while you're buying your prep classes, your books, or whatever it may be. Different companies will cater to different styles, so a lot of people, if you just Google, they have different reviews about the different companies, and they'll give you a little bit of information as to who focuses on what. For example, I can tell you that Kaplan, their classes focus a lot on test taking strategy. They don't do any content review, so that may or may not work for you. So keep these things in mind while you're picking. Also, Khan Academy is great for supplementing the books that you do have. If you're a visual learner, they're awesome as well. And definitely, I think Jerry talked about the double AMC resources. I would definitely recommend getting these because these are the people who make the test. So they know best what's going to be on there, and these are the best practice questions that you're going to get. They have 3 full-length tests, 1 that is not scored and 2 that are scored. So those 2 that are scored are usually the ones people take last because those are going to be the best indicators of how you're going to do on actual test day. So those are awesome to have. Definitely recommend that. And then, like I said, test prep courses are really going to depend on your style of learning, how comfortable you are, and whether you feel you need it. Some of the pros of the test prep courses is that they have a built-in study schedule created for you, which is great because, as Michael was saying, there's a lot of information that gets covered on the MCAT. So it can be really overwhelming if you're staring at a stack of books and you don't know where to start. So it's really great to have someone space it out for you. You also have access to the teachers and the tutors from the companies, which is great because these are all people who have already taken the test and done really well. So they have a lot of knowledge to share, and they're really great at helping you create your own study schedule to fit your needs, which is awesome. It's really convenient. They have, online classes, in-person classes, different recordings of classes if you miss one for whatever reason. So that's really awesome. Also, the resources that they include, I know Kaplan included an additional 15 full-length practice tests, and they had question banks, and they also included, within the price that you pay for the Kaplan prep course, they included all of the AAMC resources. So I didn't have to pay for those things separately, which was really nice. And also it keeps yourself a little bit accountable because you have that schedule that you're looking at. And how did I keep up with the test prep study plan? Kaplan has, and I guess I'm talking about Kaplan because that's the class that I did. I don't know if anyone else took a different class that they want to speak on, but Kaplan broke it up into 3 different units. So each unit had a checklist that you could literally go into your portal and check off the things that you were doing. So they created the plan for you and laid it out, and they would say, you know, this week you're going to cover chapters 1 through 5 of this book, chapters 3 through 6 of that book, and then take all of these quizzes and you would go and check them off, which was really great to keep yourself organized and accountable to what you were doing. And they also have the full-length practice test as well as the AAMC test. And what I was saying about the AAMC test is they have 3 full-length practice tests that you can access. And these are like full-length MCAT, very similar to what you will see on your actual test day. One of them is unscored, so you just have it for practice questions, and then 2 of them give you an actual score. So these are the ones that people recommend for you to take last because they're going to be the best indicators of how you're going to do on actual test day. So they're actually really, really accurate. So take these when you feel you're ready to kind of assess where you are and where you'll be on test day. Some of the cons, of course, it's a cost. These classes can range $2,000, $1,500, somewhere along those lines. Like I said, I did get a scholarship from LMSA, which was awesome. I'm super grateful for. So don't let the cost deter you. Contact these companies or look around. I'm sure LMSA still has a scholarship. So look for resources to help you cover those costs if this is something that you feel you'll need. It can also be easy to fall behind. I did a live online class because I didn't have anywhere where there was a live class nearby. So it's really about you pushing yourself to get everything done that you need to. And Kaplan is not big on content review, which, you know, that's what I said. You have to kind of do a little bit of research as to what the different test prep companies are focusing on. I'm pretty okay with going over content and self-teaching. What I needed help with was test taking strategies, which Kaplan was great for. So if you can motivate yourself and get yourself into a space where you can learn the information on your own, it's great to come in and then just have someone teach you how to take the test, because that's honestly a big part of it, learning how to read the questions effectively and get to the answer and quickly. And I'll touch on that question, Jocelyn, in a little bit. Yeah, go ahead, Jerry. So creating your own study schedule, and this is a little bit more of my tips if you're not taking a prep class, because the prep class will give you a little bit more structure. But if you're not, I would definitely recommend taking a diagnostic exam. There's a couple different places online where you can take a free diagnostic exam. I think Exam Crackers will give you a free diagnostic exam if I remember correctly. So this is, and don't freak out if you see a score that you're not happy with. I definitely was not happy with my diagnostic score, but the purpose of this is to figure out where you need to do the most review. And that should really guide your studying and how you're gonna allocate your time. And touching a little bit more on that, I think the test is really half knowing the content and half knowing how to take the test, because it's like Michael said, it's a beast of a test and you really have to make it through. So for the first part of your studying, for however long you're going to study, I would recommend focusing on building a solid foundation in the test, in each testing area. So you really need to map out the content that you need to cover each week. So kind of pace yourself in that time to say, okay, this week I want to cover so-and-so chapter, next week I'm going to cover so-and-so chapter, to keep you at pace. And I would do a little bit from each section each week, because like Michael said, each section tests on a wide variety of disciplines. So It's all interconnected, so you want to make sure you're covering your bases on all the topics. And most importantly, even when you're focusing on content, it's so important to do quizzes or question banks that will help you learn how to apply the content that you're learning in a form that the MCAT is going to want you to know it. And for the second part, definitely focus on taking practice tests and reviewing them. And reviewing them is I think one of the most important parts, because you want to take the full length test and you want to put yourself in an environment that mimics the environment that you're going to be in for the actual MCAT. So when I took my practice test, I would get up early in the morning, have breakfast, start at 8 a.m. and take 10-minute breaks, take the lunch, and kind of, you want to have the food that you're going to have that day, kind of be a little bit over the top about it, but you really want to put yourself in that environment to where you feel like you're doing the real deal. And then reviewing them, and I'll show you a practice schedule of how you can choose to review your test. But you really want to pay attention to if there's content that you need to work on, and these are probably going to be the questions that you missed. So when you're going back, look at the question and say, did I miss it because I didn't know the content? And if so, go back and cover that area of content. Did you miss it because there was a strategy that you could have used to get to the correct answer faster? If so, what was it? Was there a word that tripped you, or were you reading the question too fast? What was it why did you get this question wrong? And take the time to fix it. So that's why it takes a really long time. But when you're reviewing your test, you also want to know, you got a question right, so how did you get it right so that you can keep doing that? Are you really solid on that content so you can focus on something else? Did you figure out a strategy for that question that you can apply to other questions? So it really takes a lot of reflecting on your practice exams to figure out where you need to focus. And this is one of the times where you can practice triaging for yourself. This was one of the things that I did that Kaplan really encouraged us to do. Always do the passages that are easiest to you first, because those are the ones that are going to get you the most points. So practice identifying which ones did you complete really fast, so that way you have extra time to do the other ones. So things like that are the things that you need to pay attention to and start incorporating into your studies. And as far as taking the scored AAMC test, those are the last two tests that I took before my actual test. And I did one week before and one 2 weeks before. So I would do one practice test a week, and those were my very last two. Because you still want to have a week or so to review each one thoroughly. And that way you can make a decision whether you think you're ready or not. But I think doing the 2 weeks beforehand worked really well for me. As far as creating an outline, I did do outlines, and that's because something that Kaplan really pushed, and I think it really worked for me. So for creating an outline, what Perla's talking about is, for each passage, I would just jot down a quick, not even a sentence, just a quick phrase for each paragraph of something that I pulled out that I thought was really important. And then at the end, I would do a summary of the passage. And what that helped me do is, when I was going through the questions, it would help me pinpoint the paragraph that I needed to go to answer a question. So for example, if I was doing a CARS passage and they were talking about the Great Depression in paragraph 2, and I got a question about that, I would know to go straight to paragraph 2 to answer the question without having to reread the entire passage. So that was something that was really helpful to me. So I really recommend doing that. It's a little bit harder to do it in the sciences. So one of the things that I would do there is just jot down keywords. In biochemistry, for example, they talk a lot about enzymes and things of that nature. So I would jot down the names of enzymes that were introduced in different paragraphs, just so that I could keep it organized in my mind. So I hope that answered your question, but I did find it very helpful. And as far as free diagnostic exams, I believe Exam Crackers has one, if I'm not mistaken. And there are some in person, but if you just Google, I'm sure there's a ton, and you can find them everywhere. But these companies will sometimes want to hook you for their class, so they'll offer you free diagnostics. So kind of take advantage of that if you have time. So creating your weekly schedule, I think this is really important. Start off by just blocking off the time that you are not available to study, whether this is work or school or any other responsibilities. Just block it off so that you can see how much time you have available, and give yourself one day off each week. Definitely do that because you don't want to burn yourself out. Try and schedule your studying into 1.5 to 2 hour blocks. And the reason I say that is because each section is 95 minutes. So you want to get yourself into the mindset of being focused and on your game for that amount of time. So that's really helpful. One of the things that I did every day that really helped me, and I heard this from Dr. Doyle. I don't know if any of you have heard of him. He used to be the director of UCLA Prime, and I met him when I did SMDP. And one of the things that he always told us to do was to read every day in order to improve our what was then verbal, what is now CARS score. And I really, really feel it helps. So I would end every day of my studying with reading for 30 minutes. So I read a lot of novels of just fun stuff. I would read different articles in the New Yorker or the news or whatever it may be, but just try and read for 30 minutes a day, I think is a really great tip, just because it improves how fast you're reading. It helps you really learn to pick up on the important things of passages quickly. And if you're switching up your reading to different news articles and things like that, then you're going to be really prepared to for whatever passage CARS throws at you, because they can do politics, they can do philosophy, they can throw a bunch of stuff at you. So if you're well read, it'll be a little bit easier to adjust. And always do one CARS passage a day. I think that was another really helpful thing that I did, and that was something that Kaplan encouraged us to do. And it was really easy because it gave you a question bank. But doing one CARS passage a day, it takes about probably 15 minutes total, and really, really good practice. There's really no way to study for CARS except practice. So I think a lot of people struggle with this, so it's really great to make it a priority. And then just flashcards or a quick review sheet every day. The way I made my flashcard is when I was reviewing, I didn't make any until I started taking full-length practice tests. And when I would review a test, if there was a topic that I got wrong, something that a content area that I wasn't strong in, I would go over that and make a flashcard about that. And I think that really helped me a lot because it was a lot easier than trying to go through the content and make flashcards just right off the bat. I knew I was making flashcards on things that I really needed help with, which was really, really great and a great way to keep myself organized as well. I used Kaplan because that was the scholarship that I got. There are a ton of different ones. I know a lot of people like the Princeton Review. There's a ton of different prep classes to take. And like I said, it will really depend on your learning strategies. I know there's a couple test prep companies who will focus more on content review. So if you feel that that's what you need someone to help you internalize all that content, then I would choose a different company. But Kaplan was great for me because they focused on test taking strategies, and that's something I really needed. There is a ton of different, even if you go on Mi Mentor, I've seen a lot of different threads talking about this, and people can share their different experiences. They'll ask, what test prep company did you use, and what did you think about it? Would you recommend it? And there's a lot of people who have taken the MCAT who have used those test prep companies. So if you post a question on there, I'm sure you're going to get a ton of feedback on what is best and what they found helpful from each. But also sometimes, if you just Google online or go to their websites, they'll give you a better idea of what their mission is and what they focus on specifically in the classes. So just Google a little bit, ask on Mi Mentor. I think that's a great resource as well to find out what each company does. I think that would be a great way to do it. And so this is the schedule sample that Kaplan gave us about how to review each practice test. And this is assuming that all you're doing is really studying. So I actually did plan B. So I would take my full-length test on Saturday, take off Sunday, and then on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I would review each different section and practice that section. And then also, do content reviews, all that kind of stuff. the question packs, the double AMC question packs that you get included with your test prep packages, I would do those where it says practice. So yeah, that's how I did that. Yeah, so falling behind with the readings, it's really overwhelming because sometimes it's a lot. They want you to cover 10 different chapters before one class. So do your best, and really you want to focus on the stuff that's most high yield. And Kaplan is great about telling you what most high yield stuff. So what I mean when I say high yield is these are the topics that are most covered on the MCAT, so they're the ones that are going to get you the most points. So you really want to learn to prioritize those things, and so that you don't get overwhelmed. There was definitely times where I didn't finish all of the readings, and you just kind of have to bounce back and not finishing one chapter deter you from doing all the rest of the stuff. Like I said, I did a lot of, when I would do my full test, if there was a area that I was still weak in, I would take the time to go over it that week after the test. So I wasn't too worried that if I didn't catch it one chapter during the class, because I knew that topic would come back repeatedly into it. So you're seeing these topics through your studying, so you're gonna get to it and you're gonna learn more about it, and it's gonna be pounded into your head. So don't get too bogged down by completing every single chapter because it's a lot. And you also want to focus on some of these chapters you might already know, like you might be a whiz in biochem, so you don't have to spend your time reading all those chapters. Really focus on, like, that's why I said that diagnostic is so important. Focus on the chapters that you need the most help in. Any other questions about that? I think that was it for me.
Michael, can you share how you studied for the MCAT?
Yeah, so I also was fortunate enough to be invited to participate in a pipeline program, and it paid for a Kaplan course for us. So we had an in-person course. It's really expensive. It's something I wouldn't have been able to do on my own because I believe it was around $3,000 for the program. So it was really expensive. I know plenty of people who didn't pay for a course and they did just fine on the test. So if you're worried about needing one of these courses, it's not necessary. I mean, I'm sure many of us can find them useful, but like I said, it's not necessary. So I was fortunate to have this course, and we created our own schedule. So even though Kaplan offered us a sample schedule, we sort of created our own within this program that we're doing, and it was a day-to-day schedule for the next 3 months. And so the rule of thumb that we were told, and it's just a rule of thumb, it's different for everybody, was to study for 3 months, 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, which seemed really overwhelming. And I know people study for less, and I know some people who even studied more and longer. And so what I did was I set out 3 months. I didn't quite study 8 hours a day for 6 days a week. It was a little bit less than that because I did continue to work and do some other activities. But I did definitely spend several long days, and as I got closer to the exam, I remember even studying, sometimes getting a little overzealous and studying 10 hours a day, which I don't recommend. So spreading it out and really taking your time with the content, I think, is really important. And I think most of the things that I have to share were already mentioned by Vanessa. She did a really good job of covering it. Reading is extremely important. So the advice that I have for you depends on where you're at in your process. So if you're just thinking about the MCAT, it's a good time to lay out a plan. Planning is everything. So planning when you're going to take the MCAT in relevance to when you're going to apply to medical school. And so if you're at that stage, reading is huge. I had a very difficult time reading. I didn't grow up in a household where there were a lot of books and where reading was encouraged. And so I'm a slow reader. And so I knew ahead of time that I should read a lot and read a lot of different things. And so just read as much as you can and get used to reading things that are really boring and uninteresting, and try to be able to focus and read quickly and take out the main ideas. And then if you're already sort of on this track where you're going to take the MCAT, you're getting ready to study, it's the same thing. Have that plan of your weekly, monthly schedule of what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and try to stick to it and stay disciplined. Um, and I did the same thing as Vanessa. I took a diagnostic early to see what topics I was strong in, and which ones I was more weak in, and I adjusted my schedule accordingly. And then as I got further and further into my studies, I started planning out several practice exams. I took about 11 full-length practice exams. So sat down and did the roughly 8 hours of test taking, um, 11 different times just to prep for it. So this test, as we keep mentioning, is a monster of a test. Um, and it's a marathon. So you have to train before you do it, and you don't want to just go out there and wing it. You really want to prepare yourself for the endurance so that you can study long hours, you can take the test for long hours, you can sit in a seat for long hours, um, and also even the environments in which you take the test are going to be varying. So at my test center, I sat next to somebody who was really sick, coughing and sneezing a lot, and was really loud. And so you just want to be prepared for anything. And you never know what you're going to come across. Just really dedicate yourself to conquering this test, and remember that everybody who goes into medical school has to take this test. So, and it's just one metric of your application. So you want to take it seriously because it's a part of your application, but at the same time, just try not to let yourself get overwhelmed. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. You can do this. You can totally do well, and and once you do it, hopefully it'll be behind you. Um, but keeping that, and then also with that, I do know several people who have taken the test more than once, and they've still got into medical school, and they're amazing physicians. So don't be discouraged if you're one of those people who has to take it again. But really, just I think part of you being here is you taking advantage of all of your resources. So keep talking to other people, keep asking your friends who've taken it before, advisors, etc., so that you can get a jump on it and you can just be successful when you take the exam yourself.
To answer Jocelyn's question about studying before the day of the exam, I would not recommend it because you're probably going to be nervous enough already the day of the exam. So I took the test on a Friday. I stopped studying on a Wednesday. So on Thursday, I just hung out. I really love going to Target, so I just went to Target and walked around aimlessly for a couple of hours. I got all the stuff that I would need for the test day. So I bought snacks and like water bottles and stuff like that I would need the next day. And I went to bed early. I try to have a very low stress day the day before. The morning of the test, I just quickly flipped through my flashcards that were things that I still was struggling with. So just to quickly remind myself, what different enzymes do or where they're important, things like that. So I took the diagnostic exam after I had decided on my test date. So I think more so it helped me guide where I needed to pay the most attention to my studying. So even though I had already decided I was going to study for 3.5, 4 months, I knew that I now had to focus my studying on chemistry and physics because I was really struggling in that area. So I think you can take it before you decide how much time you're going to study, but I did it after, and it still was really helpful.
Excuse me. I'm gonna have Tyler come in and talk to you guys about study skills tips, and then I'm gonna have all three presenters answer the questions like Griselda and Jocelyn asked. Tyler, are you on?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me give you some knowledge in terms of how to take the MCAT per se, and shout out to Michael and Vanessa for giving a wonderful presentation so far. Everything that you guys touched on, I definitely did, and I wish I had some of those knowledge before taking the MCAT. But before I start, I just like to mention sort of my journey in taking the test. And so I actually took the test twice. The first time I got a 20 on the exam, so which is not a really good score. But I eventually went on to apply to medical school and didn't get in. And after that, I kind of felt in this depressive state that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't smart enough, that medicine wasn't made out for me, that, you know, everything that I've worked so hard for is just down the drain, and, you know, just because of this one test. And then I decided to surround myself, you know, with positivity. I had my family members, you know, talk to my family members, my mom, some of my close friends, and, you know, got this rejuvenation back, and retook the test, and I did better, and now I'm at UC Davis. So I'm just gonna tell y'all that there's hope. No matter the feeling that you're having right now, there's always hope. And so I like to just break the test down into like 3 components: the test itself, then the material, and then confidence. I think those are like the 3 main things about the test. So the test, you got to learn how to take the test and learn how to take the MCAT questions. Then we have to learn how to master the material, but then also we have to know how to be confident in ourselves and not let, you know, failure get in the way. And so one tip I wish I had, like going into, prior and even after taking the test, and even now, one of the things that I use now in medical school, there's this thing called the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And so a fixed mindset is something that you would say, oh, I'm not good at the MCAT. And so that's a fixed mindset, telling yourself, I can't take this test, I'm not good at it. But one thing that I'm currently using, and I used during my time studying for the MCAT, is that I use this thing called the growth mindset. Something that I would change that sentence from I'm not good at taking, you know, questions on the MCAT, or I'm not good at the MCAT, to I'm not good at the MCAT yet. So one word changes my entire outcome. Just using the word yet. And if y'all do this, you're gonna see it's gonna take some time to get adjusted to it, and I'll explain how this like growth mindset changed the second time success that I had on the exam. And so just using the word yet it means a lot. So I would change my sentence from I'm not good at taking the MCAT to I'm not good at taking the MCAT yet, but if I study hard or if I do more questions, I'll get good at it. And so that was my mentality going into the test. And one thing that I changed from the first time to the second time is questions. I know Vanessa mentioned this in her little presentation too, and just taking a lot of questions. And I know it might sound difficult and it might sound hard right now. You know, we're pre-meds, and we have to be perfect in everything we do. But it's okay if we get questions wrong. And there's actually studies out there that says we learn more while we get a question wrong than when we get a question correct. Mm-hmm. And so it's a good thing that we're getting questions wrong, because we're actively learning. We're learning the things that we don't know. And those are the things that we need to be successful at the, you know, in the MCAT. And so I would highly recommend like taking as many questions as possible, because there's only certain types or certain ways these writers could ask you a question, you know, on like acid base, or ask you a question on enzymes. And so questions. I would highly recommend that. And also for me, I know Michael was mentioning this earlier, that reading in English is very difficult for me. And so that was like the worst subject on the MCAT. I think I scored a 4 on the MCAT. It was bad. And so the second time around, I had to do something different. And so I decided just to read as much material as I can. And so I got a subscription to the New Yorker. And I literally read an article every day in the morning before starting like my schedule. Just a quick 15-20 minute article on anything that was on the front page. It could have been on like Chinese currency. It could have been on auto parts. It could have been on like economy in South Africa, anything, or like making dolls, whatever it was. I just decided to read and read and read and read. And so that's one thing I would recommend if you're struggling in the cars section in particular. Just read as much and do as much questions as possible. And yeah, I think the one thing that, again, I'll stress is that doing questions, as much as you can. I think that's like the highest yield thing I could tell you so far, and that'll translate into success when you guys do get into medical school. I like to speak things into existence. So when you guys do get into medical school, just actively learning by doing questions, and it's okay to get things wrong sometimes. And so yeah, Rosie. So when I say questions, there's so many resources out there. You could do questions on Kaplan. There's Berkeley review questions. There's exam cracker questions. There's Princeton review questions. And there's even the AAMC practice questions. They have like packets that you could buy online. And all of these questions, there's like even question like booklets. You could find like endless question like Q banks online if you type in like Q bank, MCAT Q banks. But I think the main ones that I used were the AAMC question banks, exam cracker question banks, Berkeley review question banks, and the Princeton review question banks. I see a question here that from Griselda. You mentioned that how did you stay balanced beside taking a day off from studying? I think this was a difficult part for me the first time around, because I got caught up in the whole MCAT is this test that is super difficult and it's gonna eat at you, and so all I did was study. But I the second time around, I surrounded myself with like positive people. I surrounded myself with my family, friends that were always like uplifting. And so after my study period, when I stick to my schedule. After I was finished studying for the day, I did not think of the MCAT. I tried to relax. I tried to go do things that I found fun. Like I played basketball, so I went outdoors or went in the gym. And wellness is a big part of this test too, and you'll realize it as well in medical school and even in undergrad. You gotta treat the body and the mind the same way, and so I think that's one way you could stay balanced during the week and also on that day off. Does anybody else have any questions I could answer?
Michael or Vanessa, share how you were able to balance your studying.
Yeah, I can start. So I like to walk. I mean, just walking outside is really refreshing to me. So I took a lot of breaks, and it really helped me to kind of be able to come back to the material and feeling refreshed. So I walk a lot. I definitely, my days off. So I did the same thing as Vanessa. I took at least a day off and spent time with the people that were important to me. I also went into the clinic because that just felt good. I tried not to do anything that was too overwhelming, so that this way, when I came back to my studying, I'd feel positive and ready to go. Because the MCAT is preparing for the MCAT for me, and I think a lot of people felt the same. Is like it's like going on it's like a roller coaster. Some days you feel really good about where you're at and what's going on, how you're doing. Like you'll take a practice test, your score will be moving upward, and then another day you'll just have a difficult time memorizing some of the content. You'll be getting a lot of questions wrong, and like Tyler said, that's perfectly fine. And just stay positive and just realize that, it's not about what you get wrong, it's about what you're going to get right. And you're going to know a lot of material by going over this. And a mentor, an advisor that I had when I was going through it, used to make me feel good about it by telling me, don't worry about what you don't know, just show them what you do know. And so every time you study a topic and you learn something new, that's an extra point for you on the MCAT. So don't focus too much on what you don't know. Focus really on what you do, and just know that that's going to show on test day.
Vanessa?
For me, like I said, I was living at home, which was great because I had left for school to LA, so I hadn't really spent a whole lot of time at home in a really long time. So my grandparents are getting older, so I actually got to spend a lot more time with them. I would take them to doctor's appointments, or if they had to run an errand or whatever it may be. I kind of used that as a little bit of my break. I got to catch up with them, which I feel like I hadn't spent a lot of time with them. So that was always really fun and really rejuvenating. And they would usually treat me to lunch, which was nice. So I just getting these extra times with like my friends or my family who are nearby, really taking my studying in only 2-hour chunks really helped. Because any more than that, I found that I would and you kind of start overthinking about it. And shout out to Tyler, because Tyler is my coach from MSR, so I would always be texting him, and he would remind me that you could do it, and really getting into that growth mindset. So surrounding yourself by those that motivate you and those who love you is really important.
Any other questions from those who are attending, or anything else that Tyler, Vanessa, or Michael would like to share? Awesome. So if anyone else has any questions, I highly encourage everyone to, if you haven't done so already, excuse me, to go on mimentor.org and create a profile and just ask those questions. Look through the questions that other students have asked. 'Cause I'm pretty sure if you're having the questions, a lot of us are having the same question. Just check on mimentor.org for any other events that we might be having. Again, either on a webinar or in person. But if anyone, yes, we will post the PowerPoint, and we will also post the recording of the presentation. Unfortunately, I forgot to start recording when I started talking. So the recording will start once when Vanessa started talking. But the PowerPoint will be posted as well. Yes, we can email, or Vanessa and Michael can put your contact information on the chat so everyone can have access to that. That will be great. And again, I want to thank you. I want to thank Vanessa, Michael, and Tyler for joining us tonight. I know that I'm pretty sure you're all busy with your schedules, and also everyone who attended the webinar. Thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, before we leave, sorry, I'm Tyler again. I know how difficult this journey is, as being pre-med, and especially for those from a disadvantaged background, or from a disadvantaged or disenfranchised community. We need y'all, and we need everybody to represent. And I'm here to literally tell you that it doesn't matter how long or how you get there, you will get there. I took the MCAT twice. I applied twice. A couple of my friends took the MCAT 3 times. And so don't worry. If there's a will, there's a way. And I know all of y'all can do it. And remember that growth mindset, and don't get bogged down that if you're struggling right now, remember, struggling is good, because we learn from when we struggle. Seriously, okay?
So if there's no other questions, or if Vanessa or Michael would like to say anything else. Vanessa, anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, I think this was even though we kind of dove into a lot of different topics, studying is very specific to your learning style and is very specific to your timing and where you are in your process. So take this as not something that's in stone, but it's something to guide your studying. And there are a ton of other different tools that I use that Kaplan teaches, that I learned from other people who've taken MCAT, that I can definitely share with you once you're in that position. But like I said, really reflect on how you learn best and where you are in your journey, and use that and this information to guide your studying. And don't get overwhelmed, because I know it's super, super easy to do that. I definitely did that. Just seek help when you need it, because people are definitely willing to help you.
We have one last another question. If someone can, what about volunteering at a hospital while studying for the MCAT? If you only have 3 months, not recommended? Question.
I think it really depends on how much time you have. If all you're doing is studying, I think taking 4 or 5 hours out of your week to volunteer is not going to really deter you from your studying, I think. But if you're going to school and volunteering and sitting for the MCAT, that's a little bit more difficult. So I think really you want to make your priority the MCAT, because it's such a beast to tackle, and it's such an investment of yourself. So I would definitely recommend make that your priority. But I think if you're going to use your volunteering as a way to take a break from studying and to kind of do a little bit of relaxing, I don't know if volunteering at the hospital is relaxing, but if that's what you need, I think that's okay.
Yeah, I would second what Vanessa said as well. I think one thing you don't want to do is to get distracted and have like volunteering taking up all your time. Again, if volunteering at a hospital and talking to patients and having that experience being a motivator and give you energy to again study the next day, I would highly recommend it if that's something that you're passionate about. So,
any other questions before we end the webinar tonight? But again, thank you again for everyone who joined us tonight. Do be on the lookout for other Mi Mentor events that will be occurring around California. Sorry, excuse me. But if we have no other questions, I hope everyone has a great night. Thank you again.
Thank you.